All right, so this is a really interesting video clip that I just saw that I thought I'd talk about. So I guess Revolt TV, which I think is owned by Puffy, but I'm not sure. I forgot. They had a bunch of black public figures on stage: Killer Mike, T.I., Candace Owens, and a couple of others. I forgot who else was on here. But as you guys know, Candace Owens is a right-wing moron. And a Uncle Tom, female Uncle Tom, I guess. I don't know what you'd call the female version of Uncle Tom. But that is exactly what she is. And they got into a really heated back and forth here, which saw Candace Owens not only just sort of unable to respond, but attempting to deflect into some utter nonsense. Let's hear this out.
Which period was America great that we're trying to replicate? Which era was it? Tell me.
I think I'll answer your question.
I'm
ready to answer your question.
Which era was it?
What?
Which era was so great?
Here's the thing that you guys are forgetting. America was actually one of the slavery was all over the world. All over the world. America was. No, I'm not saying it's okay. So why are you saying oh?
Hey man.
America was one of the first countries.
I want to like you so bad.
I'm trying to answer your question.
Smart. I want to like you so much.
I can't answer the
question. I want to hear y'all. I want to be able to hear them. I want to be able to hear them.
If I can't answer the question and you're just going to boo when I say slavery was all over the world, which is a fact, why are you booing a fact?
Because you're making light of...
No, I'm not.
You're making light of the enslavement of people that look like us. You can't make light of that. That ain't nothing you breeze over.
I haven't even finished the sentence. How am I making light of anything?
You started with some bullshit.
Okay.
So I thoroughly enjoyed that, just because I hope that Candace Owens has like the worst experiences everywhere she goes. She's a lying, grifter, lunatic piece of shit, and so she's a can of garbage. So I thoroughly enjoyed her getting booed there and just completely shat on. But basically, T.I. asks a very, I think, just good question. Like, which era was it that we should go back to? It's an interesting question that people who are MAGA get asked, well, which period do you want to go back to? Especially if you're a black person. The past isn't very generous to the African American community, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, what point do you want? So if you're a Trump supporter, Make America Great Again, it's like, where do you want to go back to? You know what I'm saying? What time frame do you want to go back to, of course? And she was trying to spew the bullshit that, the U.S. was one of the first countries that abolished slavery from the point of its founding as a nation. Now, that's what she was trying to say, where she said that there was slavery all around the world. Now, Kevin M. Cruz, who's an actual historian who actually has an education in history, and that's why education is so important. So go to school, guys. Go get your education, because Candace Owens, no college degree. Kevin M. Cruz, actual historian. He posted a tweet saying, years between independence and abolition of slavery: Haiti 0, Costa Rica 3, El Salvador 3, Guatemala 3, Honduras 3, Chile 5, Bolivia 6, Uruguay 8, Nicaragua 17, Mexico 19, Paraguay 29, Colombia 41, Venezuela 43, Argentina 45, Brazil 66, and the USA is at 87. Now, this is actually responding to some moron named Katie Pavlich, I don't know, it's a really dumb-sounding name, who is trying to claim, basically, that it's one of the first countries from the point of founding. So this is a sort of altered little, out route that you want to take, you know what I'm saying, to basically making that dumb argument that, like, the U.S. was one of the first to end slavery, which it was not. In fact, if it wasn't just straight up the last to formally end slavery, it was one of the last, if you look at just, like, time frame. But they want to alter it to the point of a formation of a nation. But the problem is, even with that, there's so many countries here, as you can see, who had done it prior. Some of these countries doing it within, Haiti doing it within 0 years, and Costa Rica doing it in 3 years, etc., etc. So this point is totally bunk and bullshit. But it's just weird to me that you would try to make that point in the first place, that like, I don't know, the U.S. it was not one of the first to end slavery at all. And also two critical pieces of information need to be added to this, okay? You need to understand the history of the United States. If you know about the Civil War, it wasn't like the U.S. just sort of ended slavery and that was that. That's not what happened. There was a Civil War in which was one of the deadliest, it might even still be the deadliest single war for the U.S., to date. And it was really horrible, shit ton of casualties, etc., etc. And basically, after that, obviously the South was fighting to maintain the right to own slaves. And after that, once the North pulled out, the North really didn't do anything to protect the freedmen and the black people in the South. And so in the South, you can look this up, and I recommend you do. Just look up the black codes of the various different southern states. I believe the most infamous one is the Mississippi black codes. If you look at that, it says that, there can't be intermarriage between a freedman and a white woman, and black people couldn't own firearms. And, they also basically had little loopholes of slavery in there as well, where it's like if you weren't working and you were deemed a vagrant and you would be forced into labor. So the two major points that need to be stated are, it wasn't just like a hunky-dory sort of, it's, slavery's over, done, that's it. No, there was a civil war that a whole side fought in favor of keeping slaves. And in addition, and they continued to really hold on to that sentiment. They never really changed their sentiment. They were racist as fuck. But, they would threaten African-American voters by, holding guns at polling places, threaten the black people who held office. And those black codes were just basically slavery, just in the black codes themselves, in which if you were deemed a vagrant, you'd be forced back into labor, or if you signed some sort of a contract, you were forced to fulfill that contract. So there still really was horrifying, just basically slavery at that point, honestly, continuing on. So those are the main things that you'd have to mention. And, of course, the horribleness that the African-American community faced after that. Whether those things, being discrimination or, voting rights being denied, etc., etc. All of those different things, redlining, it's just really a lot of horrible shit. So the idea that America was anyway good for any of that shit is hilarious. It started out, its founding was sort of based on slavery. Everything that we have now is under the foundation of slavery. And it continued to hold on to those roots really until, even to this day, honestly. I mean, if you're in prison, you still are able to be a slave, essentially. So, because 13th Amendment exempts people who are in prison, of course. So, there's a bunch of different stuff like that you could make arguments for that even exist today. But anyways, I just found that very interesting.